We are thrilled to have author Kwame Mbalia join us today. He's so well known for the Tristan Strong series, and he's the editor of Black Boy Joy, a middle grade anthology, among other things. A Howard University graduate, Kwame now lives in North Carolina. And Kwame, can I just say on a personal note, I am so happy to meet another Cheez-Its fan. Kwame, welcome. What are you sharing with us today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am going to be talking a little bit about my the books that I have worked on, both by myself, with others, with contributors, sharing a couple fun facts about them, and hopefully sharing a little treat at the end. So first off, again, my name is Kwame Mbalia. I'm really thankful for all of you out there taking time out of your day, out of your busy school day to hang out with me. I know you'd much rather be studying, taking quizzes, tests, preparing for homework and classwork. I know you'd much rather be doing all of that. However, you chose to spend a little bit of time with me, and I'm very, very grateful. So without further ado, we're going to kick it off and talk about my books and share fun facts about them. So here, I love my books. Here am I in the community. I believe I'm in Charlotte here with the Tristan Strong series, the Last Gate of the Emperor series. Off camera, you can't quite see it, or Black Boy Joy. If you cannot tell, I really, 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 really love coming out into the community, talking about reading, literacy, and sharing just little bits of wonder and joy about reading. And, not just my books, but books in particular. If you love reading, I love talking to you about reading. So this is a serious photo. The next slide is not quite a serious photo. However, it is important. It is important for me to share this photo with you, just to let you know that authors are a really, really, really weird group of people. And sometimes, we have to get into character. Sometimes we have to really test out the things that we're writing about, right? Like when I was writing Tristan Strong, Tristan is a boxer, so I'm studying about boxing. I'm taking a boxing class. The boxing class kicked my butt. I didn't take any more boxing classes after that. This photo, if you're a fan of Star Wars like I am, I'm a major fan of Star Wars. You know that Kylo Ren is a character in the Star Wars universe. This is Kylo Ren. This was a very big hit in my neighborhood for Halloween. Again, this has nothing to do with books. However, sometimes when you're doing a presentation, you have filler slides, and that's what this is. So on the next slide, I mentioned doing research. Now, I'm sure I can't hear you. I'm not in your classroom. However, I know there are a lot of students out there who know what game these particular images come from. And the reason I put this in here is because I have 4 children and I write for young children, their ages. And I like to know what are some of the issues they face, what are some of the challenges they have to overcome, what are some of the things they enjoy, right? And so I have to bribe them. And so I asked my oldest daughter, tell me about, challenges you face. Tell me about what's it's like in high school, your schedule, and I'll pay you. And she's like, all right, I need some new, hair supplies and stuff. I asked my middle daughter, all right, tell me about the challenges you face in middle school, your schedule, your day-to-day life, and I'll pay you. And she was like, all right, I need some hair stuff. I asked my youngest daughter, tell me what you're facing in 3rd grade right now. Tell me what challenges you're hoping to overcome. What's life like? What's fun for you? And I will pay you. She was like, all right, you have to spend an hour with me playing my favorite game in Roblox. So this is me being absolutely tormented in Roblox with my daughters. I played 3 games. I'm never playing them again. I think the first one was like Bloxburg or Bricksburg or something like that. The second game, which is my daughter's favorite, was Royal High. And the third game was Doors, which is absolutely terrible, 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. I am scarred for life. It is very, very scary. I am a wimp. I do not like scary things. You can tap me on the shoulder and I will be haunted for the next 2 hours. So all of this to say that we authors do so much to get the material for the characters that you relate to in your stories. I suffered for my art by playing Roblox with my children. Okay, next slide. Let's get into some of my books. This is Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. It is my debut novel, the first novel that I published. It's about a boy, an African-American boy, who is grieving the death of his best friend, and in his grief and anger accidentally punches his way into another realm where West African gods and African-American folk heroes and heroines exist. It is the book that won me a Coretta Scott King author honor. It is a book that was on the New York Times bestselling list. It is the book that allowed me to become a full-time author based off of all of you out there supporting and really cheering and championing this book. It is also, fun fact about this, I did so much research in museums for this book. In the North Carolina Museum, in the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I was looking at exhibits, at history. If you've read the book, or if you've read the graphic novel that it was adopted into, you will notice that there are so many elements of history, both of place and setting, of art and of people and of mythology, that all of that didn't just come from nowhere. You know, there was a lot of research. I'm not going to spoil it just in case there are people out there who have not finished the book, but 2 of the big antagonists, 2 of the villains in this story, I found directly while I was walking through a museum and looking at exhibits. I was like, oh my gosh, as I'm in the middle of writing this book, I need to add these characters, these people, these concepts into Tristan's story, because that's how powerful they are. That's how important they would be to this journey. And it was like truly one of the best decisions I've ever made. So if you're writing out there and you feel like you don't have enough inspiration, go to a museum, wander through the exhibits, take some notes, take some pictures. You will be absolutely surprised by the stories that are already there and the stories that you can develop by what you witness. Now, on the next slide, we continue Tristan's story with Tristan Strong Destroys the World. A fun fact about this, I don't know how fun it is. It wasn't fun at the time, is that I was writing this book while the first book was getting all of these accolades and praise and awards. And I'm like, I hope people, I hope people like the second book. I hope it's okay. I hope it's good. In the first book, there was a lot of attention placed on the heroes, not the heroines. And so in book 2, I wanted to focus on a lot of the heroines that are left out or not often talked about in a lot of our folk tales. And so that's where the 4 main supporters of Tristan come from in Tristan Strong Destroys the World, whether we're talking about Mami Wata, who is a goddess in West African cultures, or we're talking about Keelboat Annie, who was just as strong, if not stronger, than John Henry. A lot of the different goddesses and heroines in this story were pulled from a lot of the same stories that we kind of overlook them, but also these, I think Virginia Hamilton, who's an author and also an oral historian, Dr. Henry Louis Gates, like a lot of folklore historians wrote about these heroines and goddesses. And I was like, you know what? I would love to have Tristan gain wisdom and go on a wonderful adventure using them for guidance and mentors, along with the other heroes and Gun Baby that existed in book 1. And then we wrap up the trilogy with Tristan Strong Keeps Punching. This is the third book in the series, the final book in the series, and it is probably one of my favorite stories because we start in New Orleans and we end in Chicago and we visit all of these different historical locations and sites that are important to African American culture throughout the novel. And again, this book was a lot of it was written in libraries and in the cafeterias of museums as I'm doing research and surviving on coffee and hot dogs. I don't know why that's my author meal of choice, but coffee and a hot dog at like 10 a.m. I'm giving you too much information, but this is the secret to my writing success, I think. It's clearly coffee with too much creamer and hot dogs with no condiments on there, absolutely combined to form a writer tour de force. But Tristan Strong Keeps Punching continues and finalizes Tristan's story. We see Gum Baby on the cover. She finally gets her shine. But it is a book that ends the current story, but doesn't shut the door on Tristan's adventures. And I think absolutely opens them for other people to expand upon them the way that Tristan expanded upon African-American folk tales. So that's the Tristan trilogy. I think we follow up on the next slide with a slight addendum, and that is the Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky graphic novel, art by Olivia Stevens, adapted by Robert Venditti, who did a lot of work with DC and Marvel. But I love Olivia's art. I believe it really, if you can see on the camera, this book is way smaller. I think it's 5 times smaller than the original Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky novel. And that's because Olivia's art conveys so much emotion and story, and we're able to follow along on Tristan's journey without me bogging you down with words, but instead with the bright, vivid art that Olivia puts into it. I think on the next slide, did I keep it in there? Okay, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. There's no going back. There's no going back from that slide. All I will say is I love the art that Olivia did. And if you're a fan of the novel, or if you haven't started Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky, maybe you can break into the world of Tristan via the graphic novel as well. Okay, now I feel like we're suitably built up for this slide. My next series was co-written. That means I wrote it with another person, and we shared storytelling. And people always ask me, what is it like co-writing a book? And I always show them this image because people like to form partnerships based off of, business partner or maybe a project that you're doing in school. And you're like, immediately you're looking for a friend or you're looking for someone you're going to have fun with. And people like to, plan this activity around the good times. And I like to push back on that and say, why don't you find, a co-writer, a group partner, a project partner, a business partner that will ride with you side by side through the bad times. And I know there are a lot of bad times out there. This image right here is pretty terrible. If you and your business partner can make it through this, you can make it through the ups and downs of writing a book together. And so on the next slide, we see Last Gate of the Emperor, which is a sci-fi book that I wrote in conjunction with Prince Yoel McConan. Yoel is he's actually a prince. He is the great grandson of the last Ethiopian emperor, Haile Selassie. And so Last Gate of the Emperor was partially inspired by Yoel's life as a prince in exile and what it means trying to find your way home and learn about this culture that you have sort of been denied throughout your entire life, right? However, Last Gate of the Emperor takes place 3,000 years in the future. It is inspired by Ethiopian culture, music, lifestyle, food, lots of food. I did lots of food research for this book. Our main character, Yared, is the #1 video game player, not in his city, not in his space colony, but across the entire galaxy. And one day he logs into his favorite game to play a tournament where he could win $50,000, and alarms go off, spaceships drop out of the sky, and a 2-story monster starts chasing him. And he has to figure out what is his role in this intergalactic war, and what hasn't his uncle told him about who he is and what his destiny is for the future. And then we continue that story on the next slide. Yared in Last Gate of the Emperor, The Royal Trials. Yared has some idea of who he is. Now he has to find his way back home, because on a routine trip touring the galaxy, he crashes, there's an explosion, he lands on this really weird planet filled with ruins and rubble. And the only reason he's saved is because he finds a giant robot, pilotable robot, that takes pity on him. And I like to imagine that Siri, if you use iPhone, or Alexa, if you use any sort of Amazon device, imagine that that's the voice you hear in your robot that's talking to you, except they have a really bad attitude, and they think you smell, and they just continue to insult you as you try to find your way home. It is, I think, one of the funnier books I've written. I love the characters within it. I say I written, that Yoel and I have written, because again, this was also a co-written book. This is sci-fi, whereas Tristan was fantasy. So if you like magic, you may gravitate towards the Tristan trilogy. If you love video games and anime and a science fiction universe where drones, you can race drones with your friends, the Last Gate of the Emperor series might be for you. The research I did for this book was amazing. Not just because of the food, partially because of the food, but not just because of the food. Yoel was able to really immerse me in a lot of the different Ethiopian cultures, because, just like the United States is not just one united in terms of cultural background. Ask someone what their favorite dessert is in California versus New York versus North Carolina, you will get 3 different answers, because there are 3 different subcultures within the United States, and the same thing goes in Ethiopia. And so I had so much fun learning the differences and the unique cultural backgrounds of a lot of the different people that you meet, excuse me, in Last Gate of the Emperor, and that Yoel was able to introduce me to. So this was a duology. On the next slide, we have the single anthology, which is Black Boy Joy. I didn't write this by myself. I contributed. There were 17 of us stories. If you like science fiction, if you like contemporary, if you like comics, Jerry crafted a comic. If you like short little fun adventures, we have B.B. Austin, who did Amari and the Night Brothers. Jason Reynolds contributed a story. Dean Atta did a story in verse. I love Black Boy Joy because it is similar to the contributors, how we all come from different backgrounds and places in life. The stories represent that. There's fantasy, there's magic, there's science fiction, there's picking out your outfit for the first day of school, right? It was a lot of fun working with it. I didn't have to do too much research with this book because it was a short story that I was writing. However, I had so much fun putting this book together, reading everyone's stories, that I think you all will have just as much fun reading it. The analogy I like to use is that if you've ever gone to someone else's birthday party and had loads of fun, maybe you got some delicious cake, got a little goodie bag with some toys, did a somersault in the ball pit. Either way, I think that's what Black Boy Joy is. It's a celebration of the joys of Black boyhood, but it doesn't mean that Black boys are the only audience for it. We're all here to celebrate it. On the next slide are a few of the contributors for Black Boy Joy. There's George M. Johnson, moving from left to right, Tochi Onyebuchi, that devilishly handsome guy in the middle is myself, Jason Reynolds and Jerry Kraft. This is when we were in New York to film a short piece for, I think, Good Morning America. I think that's the morning show. And we just got to talk about, a lot of it was just us joking around and talking about, what this book has brought forth in us, what joy means to us. And I think that's what you get out of the book as well. So I call this the joy of community. On the next slide, this is this this accident waiting to happen. If you've ever been in a grocery store and someone runs into your ankles with a grocery cart, that's what's about to happen in this picture. My son got a fake Audi for his birthday and immediately crashed it into his sister's. But he was one of the big inspirations behind Black Boy Joy, trying to figure out how we could show or give him a way to navigate towards joy from wherever you are in life, whatever emotions you're dealing with, whether you're stressed, frustrated, angry, sad, depressed, however you find yourself. We wanted this book to provide you with just examples of how you could navigate towards joy. And on the next slide, he navigates to my office. And I think one of the joys for me in writing this book was seeing him come in. He would kick open my office door. I don't know how in his tiny toddler legs he had the strength to do it, but he would kick open the door, find the giant Black Boy Joy poster that I had made to sit in the background when I'm doing school visits. And he would just laugh and scream at it, as you can see in the picture. And it just reminded me of what this book was supposed to be across ages, across cultures, across socioeconomic backgrounds or what have you. Just joy is universal, and being able to share it is really important to me. So if you've ever heard someone laugh and then you laughed because the way they laugh, it's funny and it brings you joy, that's what this book is. We are hoping to bring you a little bit of joy no matter where you are, at what point you are in your life. Now, on the next slide, this is my joy. So I am an author. I am also now a publisher. I have an imprint with with Disney Books called Freedom Fire. And it is absolutely, I'm so thrilled with what we're going to be bringing to you. So if you like Tristan, if you like Last Gate of the Emperor, if you like the Black Boy Joy, if you love those stories, we're going to be bringing you those stories and more. Freedom Fire launches this year. I have a book coming out with it. We have another anthology coming out with it. We have another Caribbean adventure fantasy coming out with it, and so much more for 2025 as well. We're super, super, super excited about it. This is my attempt to share my love of reading, of literacy, of adventure, of quests, of magic, of powers, of technology, of going on trips with your best friend, of overcoming obstacles. This is my attempt to do that with you and share it and bring even more of these stories to the world. So again, if you love Tristan, if you like Black Boy Joy, if you like Last Gate of the Emperor and stories like that, look out for what we have coming in the second half of this year. On the next slide, my final slide, before I open it up for questions and dialogue. How good am I at video games? Would you beat me? The answer is no. You're fighting for second place. I always end my presentations with this. This is my mother. She is my inspiration. She's the one who encouraged me to become a writer. In fact, this picture didn't make it in because she just texted it to me yesterday. My mother found a journal of mine that she had given me. She'd given me a journal for me to write in. And in the book, I literally wrote, "My solemn vow is to write stories," or something like that. Like I made that. I committed to it. But she's the one who supplied it to me, who encouraged me and to push me. She's a writer herself. I remember seeing her wake up at 4:35 in the morning to do her own writing before helping to get us ready for school and get us out the door. She wrote, or co-wrote, I should say, an English textbook. She's an English professor. This woman is my role model and my inspiration. And I end every presentation with her as a reminder that I want to do for other writers out there, my children included, but not only my children. I want to do for other writers, young aspiring writers, what my mother did for me. And also a reminder to the adults out there, the teachers, the guardians, the parents, the staff, the administrators, that we are the ones who should be putting the supplies into the hands of these young writers to encourage them, to continually push them, and to make sure they have every opportunity to make their own solemn vows to create stories for the future. So I've been running off at the mouth for a very long time. But what I would love to do is open up the floor to have a Q&A session with you all. Make sure you're putting your questions in the chat. If you have some, I don't really have anything that's off limits. Ask me, because I know when I was this age, when I was your age, I didn't really have an opportunity to talk to an author, and I would have loved to ask some questions. So fire away, and I will do my best to answer them, as many as possible in the time we have left.
Terrific. Thanks, Kwame, so much. And questions are pouring into the chat, so let's get started. People want to know, so you've talked about inspiring writers, but literally, how do you start writing? What do you recommend?
That's, you know what, I guarantee you ask any writer that, and they will tell you, like, starting a story is difficult. So what I always say is, like, I'm racing to chapter 2, because if I left it up to myself, I would write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite chapter 1 or the first page or the first paragraph over and over and over, because I'm not sure if I got it right. The only way I know that I've got it right is if I go to the end of the book. If I reach the end of the book and I'm like, okay, I now have the whole picture. I now know what chapter 1 needs to be in order to get myself to chapter 30 or wherever the book ends, right? So race towards the second page, race towards chapter 2, the second paragraph, the second sentence, right? That might mean that you think your first sentence, your first paragraph, your first page, your first chapter are bad. Let them be bad. Let them be bad. You are allowed to be bad, right? Writing is less about being perfect on the first attempt and revising it. Those books that you pick up and read that you love, they weren't written one time. They were written on multiple different revision cycles between the author, between editors, copy editors, developmental editors, readers, critique partners. So many different eyes offered constructive feedback on those books that you pick up and read, right? So don't pick up a book and compare yourself to them, right? Compare yourself to your last draft that you revised and see that you are getting better. Race towards the second page, race towards the second chapter. Allow yourself to write a bad first chapter, because the only way you're going to write a good first chapter is you have to write a bad one first.
Excellent. So, can you do a gum baby impression?
Who asked that?
Leslie.
Leslie, Leslie. Okay, Leslie. So what I normally do is I save that for the end, because Gum Baby takes a lot out of my voice. So at the very end, we will do a Gum Baby little excerpt, little monologue.
Okay, back to writing. How long does it take to get published? How do you decide on cover art? Do you get to choose your cover art? Who is the girl on the cover of Tristan? These are all cover questions.
Lots of cover questions. So I'll start with the cover questions, because I heard there was a how long does it take to get published question there. But with cover questions, each publisher is a little different in how they decide who's doing the. I don't do the covers. I am not that great of an artist. I draw. I am an artist because I do draw. I want to make that perfectly clear. but I am not talented enough to do, like, this is Olivia Stevens. The novel covers were done by Eric Wilkerson, who's another phenomenal artist. But for example, with Black Boy Joy, Kadir Nelson, who's a very famous artist, did that. And when a very famous artist does, art for you, you nod and say thank you. You don't come back and be like, well, we were thinking maybe we could do this. No, I'm very appreciative. Kadir was able to take time out of his busy schedule, creating art that has won multiple awards to do the cover for Black Boy Joy. With Tristan Strong, the series, what Disney would do, what my editor would do is she would ask me, Kwame, is there a scene in your book that you feel like really encapsulates Tristan's journey or what the story is about? That could be the cover, right? So when Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky, for example, the cover is Tristan, kind of in a fighter stance going forward with the Fetterlings in front of him that he's fighting, while John Henry has his back. And I thought that was really important. This story is about a boy who is overcoming a lot of things, learning who he is, facing challenges, and becoming the hero that he's meant to be, while the adults in his life protect him and watch his back and support him. I thought that was very powerful, and I thought that was a great image to have on the cover. So, Disney and I worked together. My editor and I worked together to figure out the scene that's best appropriate, and then I step out of the way because my drawing is not that great. I'm good at stick figures. I can make a wicked smiley face, but that's about it.
Good to know. And what is start to finish time on publication? Does that vary as well?
It varies. Tristan took me 18 months from starting to write it to my editor being like, okay, we're good. Let's go get the cover. Last Gate of the Emperor, I think Last Gate of the Emperor took about 11 months. Black Boy Joy, because it was a collection of short stories, it only took me a month to write the short story, but there's logistics of getting everyone else's story, and finding the authors. We ran a contest so that 2 previously unpublished authors would get their work in as well. So Black Boy Joy was more about logistics than it was about writing. So it varies. It varies, a lot, especially whether, you're telling a middle grade story versus a young adult story versus a story for adults. So it really, really depends. The story is finished when you finish it. So go finish writing your story.
What museums did you find inspiration?
So there's the North Carolina Museum of History,
Yay.
the North Carolina Museum of Natural History,
Natural Sciences?
Natural Sciences, which is right next door, which my kids absolutely love. I'm a scientist by trade. I'm a full-time writer now, but in my previous life, I was a scientist, and I find that a lot of the investigation, the detective work, the methodical nature of scientists translates very well to when I'm trying to plot out a book. I mentioned the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., a part of the Smithsonian. And then a lot of smaller museums as well. So we were in South Carolina, and I think there's a small little, it's not even it's like in the gift shop, but it's got small little exhibits of the area, what it's like. I love going into new places and then finding the bookstores and be like, tell me the history of this place. And, my kids are like, Dad, you're such a nerd. And I'm like, yes, I am. Now tell me more history. I love history. History is in everything that I write. So I'm constantly trying to find, my wife and I are trying to go to the coast to visit a museum, I think in New Bern. We're constantly, she's an educator, I'm a writer. So museums are filled with stories that are inspirational and help provide context and background, especially when you're writing about the place that you're living in. So if you got any good suggestions for museums I should go visit, please. I'm all for it.
All righty. Are any of your stories set in North Carolina? And why not?
So I am a transplant. I am a North Carolina transplant. As my bio says, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. traveling down to Chicago, every other weekend to visit family and cousins. So that's why a lot of my books, the Tristan series takes place in Chicago, and then the magical land of Alki. Last Gate of the Emperor takes place in the future. The new series that I have coming out starting, he's also a transplant, and that's just I'm looking at my lived experience of someone moving from the Midwest and going to North Carolina. And in this case, he's a North Carolinian, who's moving to the Midwest. And I thought that juxtaposition, that play was pretty fun. Just because if you're not used to a Chicago winter, you're not, he's used to flip-flops and, Myrtle Beach and Wrightsville Beach and, Johnson Lake or Falls Lake or whatever, and not Lake Michigan, the brutal winters up there. This series after that, I do have a North Carolinian boy, and I'm really, really, really excited about the adventures that he goes on from all the way over in the mountains near Asheville to out east, in Wilmington and so on and so forth. So I'm really excited for his journey. So you just have to be patient. Just be patient. It's coming, I promise.
That's good to know. Okay. Favorite video game?
Oh, putting me on the spot. If you asked me 3 months ago, I would say Apex Legends. I haven't played because I've had so many deadlines. I haven't played it in so long. The video game, like I said, I love Star Wars. And so there's a Star Wars game called Jedi Fallen Order or something like that. And so I love launching the game, and then I don't do the missions. I just like run around the universe looking at like, oh, look at that. This is a Star Wars creature. This is a stormtrooper. Oh, this is a storm, So I put the video game on. I don't even really play it for the mission. I'm just running around exploring.
All righty. Have you ever made a mistake or changed your mind about the idea of a story?
All the time. All the time. It is a lot of work for my editors because my writing style is, all right, if you've ever been into a restaurant and you get the little kiddie menu and on the back they have the maze, right? My writing style is like you try to make your way through the maze and you can't lift up your crayon, right? So you got to kind of backtrack, you reach a dead end. So you're reaching, you're stopping, you're starting, and eventually you make your way to the end. That's how I write. I write knowing I have a general idea of my character and what he wants. And then I just start typing. And whatever comes out is what comes out. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I have to delete. The goal is to make it through, right? The totality of the story, and then revise it so it makes it seem like I knew exactly what I was doing the first time I was writing it. That's why revision is so important. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. Maybe it's not even a mistake. Maybe, like you said, you changed your mind. Maybe it makes more sense for this character to go this way instead of going that way, right? It makes the story better, but that means you have to go back and change and correct what you've written before. Writing is filled with mistakes, backtracking, deletion, rewrites. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. It is filled with that. But the mantra I say is to fall in love with revision. Because if you love the act of revision, if you love the act of becoming better, of producing better, of getting better, then your book is going to get better and better each time you work on it.
Awesome. So I think this might be one of our last questions
Okay.
before we hear that incredible impression you're getting ready to do. And I understand now that Leslie says it was a student and not Leslie, the educator, who asked for that. So Leslie's passing that off.
Way to pass the blame, Leslie.
I know, right? Or get the credit. So you talk about history a lot, but you also are writing science fiction. Do you use periods of history to inspire your worlds? And if so, what periods are those?
That's a great question. So there's two answers to that. I love you can learn. Obviously you learn a lot through history, right? I have never been in a battle. I've never been in a sword fight. I've been in a charge where I'm trying to, rescue some friends. Like I've never had to do that. However, people have done that throughout history. And so what I'm doing is I'm reading and I'm finding occurrences of this that inspire me, and trying to figure out how best to tell this story. Um, I also, for example, with science fiction, history often repeats itself, and so something that I like to do is studying naval battles, and then applying it to ships who are in space, right? Now, obviously, it's not, apples to apples because, naval battles, taking place on water, you're on one plane, you can go forward, backwards, left, and right. Whereas, in space, you can go forward, backward, up, down, left, right. And so there's a little bit of difference, but the tactics and everything, I love to study those to figure out how it translates, when, Yared in book one is leading, this ragtag group of ships to battle these invaders, right? Another thing is that names are history, right? When we name something, we are saying that this significant name from history is important and relevant enough for us to place it upon this new construction or this new ship or this street, right? And so when in science fiction, for example, in Last Gate of the Emperor, when I am naming a bit of technology, right? Like the Menelik drives, which power the spaceships. I'm naming them for someone from history who I feel like was important and relevant. In this case, Emperor Menelik of the Aksum Empire that eventually became Ethiopia, right? The research departments we name, the fields, the athletic fields that we name, we are saying that these names from history are important enough to translate into the future. And so I take naming things very, very seriously. And so I do a lot of research into history into what do I want this to represent when my readers see it, and also poke them to go do their own research to figure out who these names come from and why they're relevant to the story.
Wow. Names are powerful, aren't they?
They are. They absolutely are.
Okay, so here we go. We've got to do it. Kaja in Leslie's class is ready for that gum baby impression.
All right, I'm just going to pull up my draft and really, really hope that my voice holds out to. All right, here we go. It's already bookmarked. This is how many times I get asked this question. All right. This is from chapter 3, the Gum Baby introduction. You want to know who Gum Baby is? Gum Baby is the reason you sleep with the door locked. Gum Baby is the reason the sun runs away across the sky. Gum Baby is your nightmare, and people whisper her name and tremble around the world. There you go.
That was pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Kwame, for being here today, for sharing with all of our participants. I hope everybody goes out and starts writing and continues writing and then goes back and revises and keeps reading everything you're sharing with us.